Hello, and welcome to Music City Murder, a podcast about the crimes and history of Nashville, Tennessee. I'm your host, T. Blake Brady, but you friends can call me Tyler. Thank you so much for joining me. Music City Murder is meant to give people an insight not just into the most famous murders in and around Nashville, but also the city's history as well, and what makes Music City tick. I'm an educator by day and a writer by night. You can find my books, namely the Rolson McCain Southern Mystery Series, on Amazon and Parnassus Books down in Green Hills. If you're a fan of James Lee Burke's Dave Robichaux series, you'll probably dig my books too. There's also a novel called Suicide Blondes that's available at Parnassus, and it's set here in Nashville. So if you're into reading about Music City and a crime that takes place here, go check that out as well. One last thing before we begin. If you like what you hear, be sure to rate and review the podcast on the Apple Podcasts app. It's the little purple icon on your phone. Being a newer show, the ratings and reviews really help to distinguish Music City Murder from the hundreds of millions of true crime podcasts that are out there. Doesn't really matter what you say, just give the show 5 stars. I don't know how it helps, but it does. It has something to do with the algorithm and how often reviews are uploaded. I don't know. I'm not an IT guy. I'm a true crime guy. But it will help if you review it. So I know it takes a few minutes, but it takes some time to do the podcast. So it'd be really helpful if you just showed your appreciation with a review. Now let's get on to the show. This podcast, as you probably see from the title, is about last week's bombing in downtown Nashville. And it's a fresh case. But one of the odd things about it is that it is a case that feels almost closed. I'm sure some more details will come out, but we seem to get a pretty quick cascade of all the details in the case shortly after it happened. So I wanted to go ahead and do an episode. I felt it was kind of my duty. And it's weird because it feels like it should be a much bigger story. The bomb itself was likely larger than the Boston Marathon bomb and smaller than Oklahoma City. And I think the fact that I think it's weird that it would take casualties for someone to take this thing more seriously. But that's beside the point. My sources are a series of articles. They'll go in the show notes. There's some from the Tennessean. There's a really good article from the New York Times, and I might even have a surprise for you a little bit later. Not in this episode, but coming up in the next week or so. So anyway, like many of you, I stumbled out of bed on Christmas morning, a little exhausted from putting together toys the night before. A workbench play set for my 3-year-old, if you're wondering. Anyway, I'm a little embarrassed to say the first thing I did, even on Christmas, was to check my phone. It's a bad habit. I know it's a bad habit, but try not to hold it against me. I do my best. The news of what had happened hadn't quite hit the mainstream news yet, so what I saw was one of those Ring notifications. You know how on your phone, those of you who have Ring, they will send you security alerts and things that have happened in your neighborhood, especially if someone uploads it another Ring user. And that's what I saw. I saw something about emergency vehicles headed downtown and blah, blah, blah. It was shortly after 6:30 in the morning. And I didn't pay a lot of attention to it because these sorts of things happen. I live near downtown Nashville, and so these sort of things are fairly commonplace, especially when it comes to like gunshots and things like that. So I just thought it was something normal. It wasn't until I turned on the TV that morning and I decided for some reason, like, I'm just going to check the local news to see if anything came of that whole emergency vehicles downtown thing. And that's when I got my first inkling of what had happened. Initially, I thought a gas pipe had leaked and caused a spark. The buildings in downtown Nashville are incredibly old, if you've ever been downtown. So it didn't seem like it would take a lot for something like that to go up. But what had actually happened was so much more dangerous and unsettling than I could have imagined. Because at approximately 6:30 on Christmas morning, a bomb goes off on the corner of 2nd Avenue and Commerce Streets, right in the heart of downtown Nashville, right down near the river. And it's basically right in front of the Hooters and the Spaghetti Factory as well, just north of Broadway on the north side. The bomb itself basically levels an entire city block. The concussion from the blast does massive damage to 41, I think the number is now up to 45 buildings and businesses downtown. It causes one building to collapse outright and blows out dozens upon dozens of windows on the businesses on neighboring streets. It causes a butterfly effect of fires, flooding, and power outages. Glass and bricks litter the downtown streets. Fires char trees. Things are everywhere. It looks seriously, honestly, like something from another country. 3 people are initially injured in the blast and taken to the hospital, including one police officer who experiences temporary hearing loss. But no one, thankfully, is critically injured. And then finally, the explosion damages the most iconic building in Nashville's downtown skyline, the AT&T, or as we call it, the Batman building. I'm sure you've seen it if you've been to Nashville or seen the Nashville skyline. Now, this detail is important. Cell service is effective for most of the day in and around Nashville, as well as parts of Kentucky, Alabama, and, of course, much of Tennessee. The Federal Aviation Administration temporarily halts flights out of Nashville due to telecom issues caused by the blast. At least 1,200 employees, 45 businesses, and 400 residents from 4th Avenue to the riverfront are affected in the bombing, according to the Nashville Fire Department. Now, playing out in real time, it seemed to me like, just to give running commentary, it just seemed like I thought maybe a car had ignited, and cars do weird things sometimes. It wasn't initially thought that it was intentional, and I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. I try not to be as cynical as I guess I could be. So I just tried to wait until the facts came out, and they came out fairly quickly because footage is quickly released, placing an RV at the location of the bombing around 1:22 a.m. on Christmas morning. It's a still photograph, and you can see someone in the driver's seat of the RV, but it's impossible to discern any other details about the things happening in the cab. I thought I saw another person in there, but I think I was wrong, because it becomes fairly obvious at the point that the attack was planned and carried out and not just some misbegotten tragedy. And here are perhaps the most bizarre details that come out soon after the photos release. 15 or so minutes before the RV goes off, it starts playing a message warning anyone who is in the area to please evacuate, that a bomb is about to go off. Originally, I thought that it was the bomb squad playing the message for other people, but that's not the case. It was coming from the RV. A woman named Betsy Williams says she heard gunshots just before the RV's message began playing. The message said specifically, "Evacuate now. The vehicle has a bomb and will explode. Evacuate now." And here's a detail I didn't find out about until doing research, but apparently the RV begins doing a countdown, and people like Betsy Williams and her family abandon their residences in search of shelter. Not sure if the message is real or some kind of elaborate prank. The RV also plays, and this is the part that's really, really chilling, is that it starts playing the song "Downtown" by Petula Clark. And I'm sure you've heard it on the oldie stations. I'm not going to sing. My wife knows how well I sing, and so that's why I'm not going to sing. But it is an example of gallows humor at its worst. I mean, the song is about, if you're feeling lonely, you can go downtown, is the basic gist of the song. So just before the explosion, a police officer had been called to the scene, not because of the RV, but because of the reports of gunfire near downtown. And so the suspicious vehicle then gets identified. The bomb squad is summoned, but they're a little too late to the scene because the bomb ignites around 6:30 before they can approach the vehicle to try to determine whether or not they can turn it off. 6 Metro Nashville police officers who are on the scene are later heralded for their bravery. And I just wanted to take a minute to call them out by name to ensure they get the plaudits that they deserve. The officers' names are, and forgive me if I mispronounce, James Llewellyn, Brenna Hosey, Michael Sipos, Amanda Topping, James Wells, and Sergeant Timothy Miller. They're doing a job that I myself don't think I could do. And so during the countdown, the 6 officers rushed into buildings and got people to evacuate before the explosion took place. They almost certainly saved lives that morning, and so we can be super thankful that they did. Even though what's odd is that the purpose, it's clear from the sound of the audio that the purpose is not death but destruction that the perpetrator wants to do here. I don't know what other word to use. Okay, so it doesn't take long after the release of these initial details, maybe another day, if that. I think the next morning, the 26th, we figure out who the suspect is. And it's a man named Anthony Q. Warner. So I'm going to give you some details about the suspect in this bombing and then try to put the details together towards the end. So we're going to get kind of a biographical sketch of this person and then try to put the pieces together, because we don't know for sure why this took place, but it's, to me, fairly obvious. And I think the details will prove me right. So Anthony Warner worked mostly in IT, information technologies, in and around Nashville, though a burglar alarm business was registered to him from 1993 to 1998. On December 5th, Warner sent out an email to the businesses he served claiming to be retiring from IT. And like I said, most of these details are from a New York Times article related to the attack. Investigators recently found that Warner had given away his car and told someone else close to him that he had cancer. It's unclear as to whether or not the cancer charge is true, although I'd guess probably not, unless that was maybe the instigating factor in this that sort of sent him over the edge. And there's also some business. I don't really want... House stuff doesn't interest me, but there's a woman who lives, I believe, in Los Angeles, California, and Warner supposedly bequeathed, I don't know if that's the right word here, but handed over property, 2 houses, I think, to this person, a 29-year-old woman who says at the time she didn't know that it had happened. And Tennessee has a weird rule that the person you give property to doesn't have to agree to it or know about it. I think that's the rule. I didn't do research on that part, but that's just yet another odd detail about this extremely odd case. And so I think those are the basic details. I'm going to get into a few more later, but we have a person who worked in information technologies who set off a bomb downtown. A very sophisticated, it seems like a pretty sophisticated bomb itself. And the logical end game of this discussion is finding a search for the motive, the why. Why would a man in his early 60s stuff an RV with explosives and blow himself up, if not for some larger purpose? If he wanted to kill himself, then there are ways of doing that that are not public, that are not meant to say something. And here's where things get particularly weird, especially when it comes to the suspect and his beliefs. Anthony Warner was in life an out-and-out conspiracy theorist. That's probably not a shock to anyone listening. Apparently, he was so enamored with the idea that the world is being run by lizard people. Yes, that's a thing, lizard people, that he would go in search of these reptilian beings at a nearby state park. Why they might be hanging out at a state park, I'm not sure. But anyway, that's where he thought there might be maybe a nest of them. And side story, it reminds me, there's a Stephen King short story from Nightmares and Dreamscapes that this made me think of. It's a story called The 10 O'Clock People. Anyone who's a Stephen King aficionado probably remembers this one. It's about a guy who, when he attempts to quit smoking, finds that he can see bat creatures pretending to be human beings. Like you have to have recently quit smoking. Like that was the trigger for it. And you could see that these bat-headed monstrosities were walking around. So also kind of like the plot to John Carpenter's They Live. So if you're interested in this sort of thing, then you can go, it's like pod people stuff. It's very much Invasion of the Body Snatchers. But anyway, Warner is suspected of being one of the more out there conspiracy theorists, if the lizard people thing didn't tip you off. And that said, I do have to clear my throat a little here. I don't believe there's anything inherently wrong with finding entertainment value in conspiracy theories. I myself love to hear about new and interesting ones, but I'm also grounded enough that I see them as pure entertainment and fantasy rather than prospective, objective truth being concealed by the government. I think it's fun to watch conspiracy theories and think about them, but not take them seriously, if that makes sense. And I think the problem is that many people have trouble seeing the bright red line that demarcates reality from fantasy. And when the two, especially if you're seeing this on a day-to-day basis, I mean, YouTube, it should be noted, is particularly successful at taking people and slowly dragging them willingly into the world of conspiracy mongering. There's a really great podcast called Rabbit Hole, done by the New York Times, that kind of explores how YouTube's suggestion algorithm can send people spiraling into conspiracy mania. And it's not good for the brain because, people who, to give an example, people who start by watching like mommy vlogs, like stuff about being a mom, will get suggested sort of anti-vax videos on the suggestion algorithm. So you may go from being a like concerned mother to someone who's against vaccines within the span of a few months or whatever. And all of that said, hunting for lizard people in the bushes at a state park doesn't explain why a man might attempt to destroy an entire city block. Those are really strange conspiracy theories, but they don't seem to have any bearing on the case at hand. And so this is where cell phone towers and 5G comes in. If you already know about the 5G conspiracies, forgive me because I'm going to run through a quick explanation for why some people seem to be so afraid of the proliferation of a new and exciting technological advancement. And so if you're asking yourself, what in the hell is 5G and why are people afraid of it? Here is the answer. So 5G is just the newest, most advanced cell phone technology. It improves coverage and phone speeds and all of that, I think. I mean, that's how I look at it. Like, 4G is better than 3G, and 3G is better than I don't know if there was a 2G, but the higher the G number, the better it is. I mean, that's about the link to which I understand it. So because of that, the sort of proliferation of technology, companies like Verizon have been installing 5G towers for most of the year, and I think starting last year. And so they're sort of like building up the infrastructure, and people who are, I think, easily swayed by nonsense come to think that the 5G infrastructure is a means for brainwashing people. And also, this is a conspiracy theory that it's causing COVID. So the towers are this elaborate hoax. And I think since some of the technology itself may be coming from China, people think that COVID was spread through the 5G towers. I didn't go very far into it. I think that you basically get the idea that people are like, new technology, bad. And I think some of this has to do with the rural nature of the lack of internet. Like my parents live in a place it's still difficult to get good internet. And I live in a city, Nashville, of course, so it's easy for me to get internet. And I think that some of the sort of fear of encroaching technologies comes from that. And I think a lot of conspiracy theory can come from that as well. Sorry. And so now that you know all of that, it seems pretty obvious, right, what happened here. And I'll add to that the fact that the cops find some rambling writings about conspiracy theories in his house. And we'll know more about that in the coming months. So expect an update when we find the final details. I mean, things are coming out on a daily basis, and so it's going to continue. And this guy had to have been radicalized by internet conspiracy theories, and he became desperately unhinged and acted out like that's where we are. Some might argue a link between conspiracy theories and the actions of the accused can't be clearly delineated. Like, there isn't a link. Some people argue that, but I think it's a fair point, but they're probably being a little too cautious. It seems like this person he was probably already a little, let's say, unwell, and managed to be sort of toxified by all of the things he was seeing on the internet. And people who are in IT spend a lot of time on the internet. And so through a cursory investigation, I mean, a thorough investigation, but early investigation, DNA analysis, the VIN number on the RV, and tips from the public helped lead investigators to Anthony Q. Warner's doorstep. And the question is, now, I think the question then becomes, well, how is this guy able to build a giant bomb in his RV without the authorities knowing? Ha-ha! The answer is he wasn't able to do that. The authorities sort of knew. And this is one of the big things that will come out. There's a big controversy over this. So in August 2019, police are called to the home of Anthony Warner's then girlfriend. She's sitting on the front porch with 2 unloaded guns nearby. She tells the police they belong to, quote, Tony Warner, and she doesn't want them in the house. She also tells them about Warner's repeated comments about bomb making. Here's the direct quote from the Tennessean article I was reading. Raymond Throckmorton, who served as the woman's told officers Warner frequently talks about the military and bomb making. Another quote, Warner, quote, knows what he's doing and is capable of making a bomb, the lawyer told officers, according to a police report. In response, the police then go to Warner's home about 1.5 miles away from the girlfriend's residence, but Warner doesn't answer the door. The officers see the RV behind the house, but the vehicle is fenced off and the police are incapable of looking inside. While there, they note that there are several security cameras and wires attached to an alarm sign on the front door. The cops pass the information along to their supervisors, who then notify the FBI. But after an FBI background check brings up absolutely nothing on Warner, save for a 1978 marijuana arrest, it seems like the case kind of disappears. In an update this past week, Mayor John Cooper explains that in addition to the other details about Warner's personal demons, his life had seemingly spiraled out of control, and he might have been spending time in the company of drug addicts and other not great people. This is a statement echoed by the police chief, and there is some sort of hand-wringing over the language of it, and so I think that there will be more clarification on that. Don't attach too much meaning to that statement, but that was also relayed this week in Mayor Cooper's update. All right. So, after the bombing, authorities searched Warner's home on Saturday, December 26th, the same day that Governor Bill Lee requests federal aid from FEMA. Images from Google Street View show the same RV as the one used in the Christmas Day bombing. The Street View is, I think, from 2019 or 2018. Human remains are found among the debris in the blast, and tissue samples from the remains are matched against DNA found in a hat inside Warner's car. So he's quickly identified as the bomber, a suicide bomber. And I think it's important for us at this moment to recognize that this was a suicide bombing. Unequivocally. And America is now a place where this has happened. And let's hope that this is the only time it happens. Federal investigators are currently testing residue from the crime scene to narrow down the chemicals and materials used to construct the bomb. And additionally, the FBI and ATF are sorting through credit card and bank receipts to determine what purchases Warner made in the lead up to the bombing. They already have some idea of some things that he bought that could be bomb related, but they haven't confirmed it yet. So on Wednesday, December 30th, a couple days ago, federal authorities turned the crime scene back over to the MMPD. So it seems like federal authorities have gotten everything that they need. And there is currently a curfew for downtown Nashville through January 7th, so 5 more days. Should probably not be out during the pandemic anyway, but that's a whole nother story. All right. That's all that I know right now. Those are most of the facts. Unless something came out in the last day or so, I locked the script yesterday. I don't suppose they're all out yet, but I did think it was kind of my duty to provide some kind of commentary around I mean, the only way to describe it is an act of terror. This person was a terrorist, a suicide bomber. I mean, if you have problems with that language, then think about who this person was, what his aim was, and why he was doing it. It's clear that he was trying to knock out cell phone towers and 5G. And he succeeded for a day. And I think let's hope that there aren't other similar outfits and organizations that are more funded and organized in America that are taking a look at how this worked and what did and didn't work and how to make it worse, because that could be terrifying. I'm pretty pessimistic about it. And, I could be overreacting. It is possible, but just remember how you felt in the wake of Columbine. If you were alive then. I was, I think, a junior in high school. And I remember how I felt. I thought, this kind of thing doesn't happen in America. And then it happened over and over again. Let's hope, in essence, this is more like the Oklahoma City bombing, or maybe Boston, that really spawned no copycats. I don't think that it's a coincidence that it happened during one of the most strained and bizarre years in the history of America. But let's just hope that this isn't a trend. People who feel they have no options are capable of some very mean things. Let's hope this is but a morbid capstone for a relentlessly macabre year and not some signal of future actions by desperate people. Let's hope that. And that's it for this episode of Music City Murder. A fairly short one. And don't forget to rate and review the podcast. Go over to the Apple Podcast app or wherever you listen and give it a rating. That helps a little bit. I do have a Patreon. The next episode will likely be behind the paywall, so it'll be something not Nashville related. I kind of want to do like a more nationally known story, and so just hop on board. It's $1 a month, so $1. You could probably find $1 in quarters in your couch every month to cover this, and it would help the show out a lot. It would keep us on the air and pay for the not the Wi-Fi, but the bandwidth and all of that to help pay for the show. So just keep that in mind and know that I'm out here. I'm going to keep doing it no matter who joins the Patreon, but it would be helpful if you enjoy the show. Kicking in $1 a month wouldn't be that bad for all the extra stuff that you get. So thank you guys for joining me. I'll keep this short and end under 30 minutes. And we'll see you next time on another edition of Music City Murder.